What's that? Yeah, we got in, actually made it home from Atlanta at a decent hour last night. So yeah, it is good to be home. I'm still getting unpacked like everybody else. Kind of weird. We haven't been, haven't opened up on the road in some time. So just trying to get organized and get the day going has been a little bit more challenging, but all good.
What would you take away from the series in Atlanta? Just what do you hope to build on this one?
Yeah, well, obviously Saturday was disappointing. We have a lead going into the ninth, and we're in a good spot. We knew Friday was going to be a tough one just because it's Sale, and going back the next day in the moment, I didn't really appreciate the at-bats we took on Friday night. But then the next day when we went and evaluated, basically all the reports we get, we took some pretty good at-bats, and defensively they made some really good plays that saved some runs that who knows what that outcome could have been. But when you play against a Chris Sale, you're trying to score 2 to 3 and get to the bullpen, and we nearly did that, but we didn't get it done. And then Saturday, obviously, we had the lead, and we don't hold on to the lead, but I'd like to think that it was a good character game for us yesterday to bounce back and get a win and get home and hopefully get going in front of our crowd today and get a win today.
How would you evaluate just the back end of your bullpen right now, and with Carlos, both with the foot and also the velocity of the command?
Yeah, well, the foot's unfortunate. He's just saw him get in, and he's still in a boot, so I don't know how he's feeling today. But aside from that, the velocity, we've talked about it quite a bit. Historically, he's been a slow starter. Maybe this year a little bit more slow than last year. But more importantly is the command has got to get better. If we're going to be a good team at the end of the year, if we're going to be a playoff team, Carlos Estevez needs to be a big part of our bullpen. So our challenge right now is how do we figure out how to get him performing the way he's capable of performing. Fortunately, we have a guy like Lucas who pitched the ninth yesterday. We have him, we have Strom, we got Schreiber, we have other guys, but it takes an army down there, and if we're going to be a good team, you got to have more than just those guys, and Carlos needs to be a big part of it. So we just got to work with him to figure out what the answers are to get him back to being an effective closer for us.
JJ, when it is someone who's historically a slow starter, what's the difficulty of evaluating whether or not this is part of his career or something?
Yeah, it's hard because here in April he averaged 94.5 miles an hour, and it slowly crept up, through the month of April. But we had a couple nail biters in April last year. The funny thing is, and it's just the way the game goes, if that ball doesn't hit his foot, we end up with a win. It doesn't change like what we saw, but we end up with a win. We had some wins, like the command was better. We need to, kind of lean on the history a little bit, but also we have to solve the problem. We have to figure it out. He's got to figure it out. But he's a competitor. He's a veteran. It's not the first time he's blown a save, so he'll figure it out. He'll bounce back. He wants the ball, and that's what good closers do.
JJ, you talked yesterday about not being averse to putting to enable him to get more pitches and be able to build that arm. But you can't do a whole lot while the foot's messed up.
Right.
So how do you balance one less roster spot versus an IL situation?
Yeah, we hope that come Wednesday, he's not. I don't think he's going to be available today unless something really happened miraculous overnight. And then we're off tomorrow. So now you get 3 straight days, and hopefully by Wednesday we can determine whether or not it's an IL situation. We don't anticipate that, just based on what the trainer said yesterday. We don't anticipate an IL, but if it's swelling, if it's limiting his ability to land, then that's potentially a solution. The tricky thing is, though, and this is what I think your question is, on the IL, you can't get outings. You can't get into games and get that rhythm that he needs to get his body moving the way it needs to move. So that's going to be the challenging part. I don't really have an answer or how we're going to do it. I think it's just day to day and figure out what's best. The lower leverage situations solution right now, but also we got to win ball games too. So it's finding those right situations, and lower leverage doesn't necessarily need to be we're up 4, down 4. Lower leverage could be the 6th inning, the 7th inning instead of the 8th or 9th inning, with the right matchups to try to get him the outing. I feel the more touches he gets on the mound, the more game reps he gets, the better off he's going to be. Now it's just a matter of trying to plug it in and also win at the same time.
We came out here and had that press conference about the fences moving in. Now they're in. You guys finally have a game with it today. Just anxious, excited? What is it to see it finally?
Well, to be very candid, from here, I'm going to see them for the first time. So, saw pictures all through spring training. They were sending us pictures and videos. To see it come together is kind of fun. Now to see how it plays is really the ultimate test. That changed the fences, but we did it for competitive reasons, and hopefully that pays off. And we're about to find out. But it is exciting, and I think we don't know how it's going to play yet. We have our projections, but I think from a fan experience, they should feel like they're still at Kauffman Stadium. It's not a weird fence. There's nothing, no nooks and crannies, no, Houston with that right angle and left field, none of that. The corners are going to play a little bit different because it's the original wall and then the new fence goes into the wall. So we'll have to, shoot balls around there. I know some of our guys that were back in Kansas City last week were shooting balls around the fence so our coaches could see how they play, because of all the years you'd like to have a workout day, this would have been the year to do it, but the schedule didn't allow it, so we were doing our best to try to project how it's going to play.
How about early thoughts on the ABS?
Yeah, I love it. We've had a lot of, I think, Salvi obviously did a great job. When to challenge has been more of a topic of conversation than I thought it would be, because I feel like, you want to have those challenges late in the game. But I think the more we talk about it, like, common sense should tell you when to challenge. I don't want to pick on any one team, but we saw how it should be used against us as well. The team was out of challenges in the first inning, really in low leverage situations. That's what we're trying to avoid. The players are competitive, and our message has been more about these are team challenges. They're not individual challenges. They are team challenges. In football, you have the advantage the head coach gets to throw the flag. We don't have that players. This team challenge, but it's fun. I think you'll see our fans today react to it. I know there were some games, there was a lot of overturned calls, and fans love it. So there's some strategy to it, but I think it's going to make our game better, and I'm glad that it's in our game now.
JJ, I don't know if there was a directive, but it seemed like later in yesterday's game that pitches that hitters could have challenged potentially, they didn't. Was that an effort to save it for the pitchers needing to get outs to end the game?
Yeah, I couldn't tell you that it was a definitive effort, but we're just trying to emphasize here's the high leverage. It's clearly when guys are on base. When guys are on base, runners in scoring position, that's your highest leverage. The first and second and third inning are not as high leverage as the seventh, eighth, and ninth. So again, using that common sense meter, I would say, we're just trying to get our players to think through the situation before the challenges, are more impactful than non-two-strike challenges. So we saw a 1-0 challenge. Like, in our minds, like, why would you challenge 1-0? Your major league hitters, if it's 1-1, so what? The bat's far from over. He's a good example. He's got the catcher's sitting still. He's got the best view. The hitter's moving, the pitcher's moving. The catcher has the best view. So from our perspective, if you're 100% sure or you feel close to 100% with that, we do prefer it later in the game. So it's just a matter of learn from him and just think we didn't challenge once. There were a couple calls late. I'm like, what the heck? Just challenge. Like a couple borderline calls. Our hitters chose not to. It's okay too.
JJ, what was your impressions of Carter Jensen's just overall input on yesterday's game from behind the plate and producing at the dish as well?
Yeah, no, he was impressive. I think a great way to evaluate a catcher is if you don't notice them. If you notice balls kicking around everywhere, balls getting by, then obviously they're having a tough day. Didn't really notice it. In about the seventh inning yesterday, I was thinking to myself and made a comment, Carter's doing a good job because he was very calm back there. He's gaining a lot of confidence behind the plate, and he's going to continue to get better. Offensively, looking at our reports again, he was one of the hitters that scored the best in our scoring system against Chris Sale Friday night, which was awesome because we obviously chose not to play Jack and we played Carter. But his plate discipline showed up that night, and he made really good swing decisions, which ultimately leads to results over the course of the season. Didn't necessarily get him that night, but it's a good sign that he's settled in and he's comfortable at the plate.
The sacrifice fly he had too.
Yep.
That's kind of a troublesome for you guys last year.
Yeah.
Is that encouraging as well?
Absolutely. I thought we went first to third really well this weekend. We've talked a lot about our base running, being aggressive, being fearless. With that, sometimes you'll make some mistakes, but I thought we ran the bases really well. Situationally, we performed. That was one of the ones that I thought we really capitalized when we needed to. That was a leadoff double, if I'm not mistaken. Eventually, we got the sac fly. We get a leadoff double, it's a high run probability. You don't want to leave that run on the table, and Carter got the job done. So it's a great sign for us and for Carter.
You mentioned Jack. He's gotten a few hits here early. How important is he for this year for you guys? And what did you see all spring, off-season, WBC that gives you encouragement?
Well, he's really important to us. We're trying to, not put too much on him. We have a lot of really good hitters in our lineup, so just trying to blend in has been our message to him since last year. But I think there was a great learning experience for him last year. Clearly, being more selective at the plate is going to be where he needs to improve the most. From the time spring training started, he started taking more pitches. He's walking more. He may be a guy that benefits a little bit because of the challenge system. He doesn't. If he really wants to challenge, he can. So maybe that helps him in a weird kind of way, be more selective. But we saw it early in spring training. We saw it in WBC. We saw it when he came back, and then we saw it this weekend. He laid off a lot of borderline pitches that in the past he's swung at. So if he continues on that path, he hits the ball so hard that if he's able to hone that zone in and get really selective, he's going to do a lot of damage as a hitter. So we're really happy with where he's at offensively.
If you could evaluate Seth, particularly with how he finished last year, and then also after that, just Cole's opening day.
Yeah, the first 10 days of the season, because of the option rule, you hold your breath, and it's actually 15 with pitchers. You hold your breath because your bullpen can get worn down so quickly. So Cole, even though he didn't have his best stuff, giving us 4 was big. What Waka and Lugo did was huge, because now we're fully rested. We're loaded for today. We got an off day tomorrow, and then you get into this stretch of games. I think it's 12 in a row. But those guys going deep into games it's huge any point of the season, particularly right now where you don't have the ability to option guys and get guys up in case you use your bullpen all night. Those types of starts are big. And being very candid again, I'm always uneasy the first week of the season because of that. But those two guys did a great job.
How important is it for you guys to be honoring Terrence today?
Yeah.
And what they did in Atlanta too?
Yeah, no, thank you for asking that. It's awesome. It's such a tragic thing to lose a guy at 34 years old. But it's the least we could do, for his family. So it'll be fun to see his kids out there. His son's a baseball player. He was very involved with his youth team. So we had Zane out on the field the other day running around. Our players do what they do. They're special guys, and they made that day special. And hopefully it's the same thing today, and our fans appreciate celebrating Terrence's life.
JJ, just your thoughts about Bubic and where he is and what this day means for him.
Yeah. Chris, I thought last year did a really incredible job. We made a trade basically because we had faith in him being the starter and being a quality starter. Making the All-Star team is huge. It's a confidence builder. It's a resume builder. It's something that every kid dreams of to play in an All-Star game. But this is what Chris is built for. He's so mature. He prepares well. I really think the guys that we just talked about, Lugo and Waka, have helped him, develop as a starter, and I'm looking forward to what he does this season. But he's in a position to have a great season, great year.
How much of just a sigh of relief was it to take the game yesterday and not come here 0-3 and
Yeah.
have the focus be on that instead of just opening day being fun?
No, it's big because you don't, obviously the tension mounts when you don't win games, and we lose our first two, you want to get a win before you get back home. I could say the same thing. We feel the same way when we open at home, and we've done this where we go 0-2, and you really want to get that win at home before you go on the road. It was just reverse this year. But our guys will be more relaxed today. You know, as much as they say it doesn't bother them or they don't think, of course you think about that. You don't want to get swept your first weekend. So that win was huge.
As much as you don't want to be in that position, this team has had quite a knack on the last couple of years to avoid sweeps.
Yeah. Well, I think that's the character of the club, you know, and it's also, I think it's a sign of no panic. I mean, when we, as frustrating as a tough loss like Saturday could be, it's 162 games. Like, you're going to have them. You know, you just try to remind yourself that we're going to be on the other end of those too, where we steal a game from somebody that we shouldn't have won. So it sort of evens itself out. And if you're a good team, you're going to bounce back. You have to, you know, and, you know, I've shared this in the past. I look at our season, it's like 10 of our games is equal to one NFL game. You know, so trying to go 6-4, 7-3, that's the equivalent of one win in the NFL. So losing 2 in a row, you know, it's going to happen. So it's not a big deal. You don't like to do it right out of the chute, but it's going to happen during the course of the season. But it's kind of like players right now with their batting averages. You want them to get off to a good start because they look up at the scoreboard and they see, you know, I'm hitting 120. You know, but there's not enough at bats to really evaluate, but they still see the 120, you know, so it's the mental game, you know, that players play and teams play over the course of the year. All right. Thank you.